Rachel was a 35-year-old married woman. She and her husband, Daniel, were the couple everyone envied. They seemed perfect. Daniel took Rachel shopping, showered her with expensive gifts, even bought her the latest car. Everyone wished they could be like them, but were they really happy? No. You might wonder why. Rachel and Daniel had been married for 7 years, but they had no children. In the early years, they held on to hope, telling themselves a child would come eventually. But even after 5 years, there was nothing. Rachel was often sad. She and Daniel never stopped praying for a child. Then, 7 years into their marriage, everything changed. Her mother-in-law and 2 sister-in-laws moved into their home. One day, while Rachel was in the kitchen, Mrs. Okoro and her sister-in-law Chika walked in. Good-for-nothing woman. All you know is cooking and eating. You can't even give my son a child, just one. Mrs. Okoro mocked. Mama, this one isn't even a woman, she's a man. Chika added, sneering. That night, Rachel cried quietly in her room. The next day, Daniel confronted his mother and sister, warning them not to mistreat his wife again, or they would leave his house. Mrs. Okoro was furious. Ada, your brother threatened to throw me out of his house. All because of that useless woman. Chika suggested Rachel was using a charm on Daniel and proposed throwing her out one day. While Rachel stepped out of the kitchen, Mrs. Okoro poured excess salt into her cooking. At dinner, no one could eat the food. Mrs. Okoro mocked. Daniel, look at the woman you married. She can't bear a child, and now she can't even cook. You married a man, not a woman. Daniel stayed silent, unsure how to respond. Later that night, Daniel scolded Rachel. I don't even know what's going on. You can't cook good food anymore. I'm disappointed. Maybe my mother was right. Maybe I married a man in disguise as a woman. He walked out. Rachel called her best friend, Rose, and told her everything. Rose sympathized and warned her to leave the house before it destroyed her completely. The next day, Rachel was washing clothes. Ada brought more garments, demanding Rachel wash, iron, and store them in her room. Shocked, Rachel said nothing. Another time, Rachel was watching a movie in the sitting room. Her mother-in-law barged in, shouting insults. Useless woman. All you do is waste time. You can't even get pregnant. You don't deserve to be called a woman. Rachel was heartbroken. She couldn't even talk to her husband anymore. Daniel stayed out late, returned home drunk, and left her alone with the cruelty of her in-laws. One day, Mrs. Okoro called Daniel. You need to bring home a second wife, or get a woman pregnant. I want to hold my grandchild before I die. You're not getting any younger. Daniel replied calmly, I hear you, mother. I'll consider it. Mrs. Okoro was overjoyed. 2 weeks later, Daniel brought home another woman. Rachel asked, trembling, who is she? Daniel replied, she is my second wife. Rachel stood frozen, heartbroken, shocked beyond words. Rachel stood there, shocked, heartbroken, and disappointed. If anyone had told her that this moment would come, that her beloved husband would one day bring another woman into their home, she would never have believed it, all because she did not have a child. Children came from God, she could not force him to give her one. Daniel, her husband, should have shown a little more patience. Mrs. Okoro, on the other hand, was overjoyed when she saw the woman Daniel brought home. She praised the lady, calling her sweet names and declaring her the rightful owner of the house. She told her not to worry about anything, assuring her that she, her mother-in-law, and Daniel would do everything possible to make her happy and comfortable. Bridget smiled and promised to do everything to make the family happy, including giving them a son. Mrs. Okoro was extremely pleased when she heard this. She even hugged Bridget. That night, Daniel slept in a different room with Bridget, whom he was not yet married to, leaving his legal wife, Rachel, alone. Rachel called her mother and told her everything, crying bitterly. But her mother advised her to remain in her husband's house and fight for her marriage. She said the family's name would be dragged into the mud if people found out that her daughter had left her husband's home. Rachel was shocked and angered by her mother's words. She ended the call abruptly. The next morning, Mrs. Okoro prepared delicious jollof rice and chicken for Bridget, who happily ate the meal, while Rachel was ordered to wash all the plates and do the housework. Rachel obediently did as she was told. When Daniel returned from work that day, he came with 2 shopping bags and handed both to Bridget, who collected them happily. Rachel stood in a corner, watching them with sadness written all over her face. When Bridget opened the bags, she saw the new pairs of luxury shoes and wig she had asked Daniel for last night. She smiled brightly, praising him and calling him the best man in the world. A week later, Mrs. Okoro called Bridget into the sitting room. She told her that since she was enjoying Daniel's love and attention, she needed to secure her place in the house, even without marriage, by getting pregnant for Daniel as soon as possible. That way, she could push Rachel out of the house, and Daniel would formally marry her. Bridget was delighted by the advice and promised to get pregnant before the month ended. For 2 weeks, Daniel and Bridget spent every night together, while Rachel was left alone with her thoughts. Rachel visited several hospitals and was told the same thing repeatedly: nothing was wrong with her. She could bear children. Her friend Rose suggested it might be a spiritual issue and took her to a prophetess. Rachel paid a large sum of money for prayer sessions. On the 7th day of the prayers, the prophetess instructed Rachel to sleep with her husband. When Rachel returned home that day, she found Bridget, Daniel, Mrs. Okoro, and her sister-in-law having dinner together. No one asked where she had been all day. She quietly went to her room and freshened up. Later that night, she asked Daniel if they could talk. He replied impatiently, telling her to be quick because Bridget was waiting for him. Gathering courage, Rachel shyly asked if they could spend the night together as husband and wife. Daniel immediately refused. He told her that if she could get pregnant, it would have happened 7 years ago, and that one night would not change anything. Rachel's heart shattered as she watched Daniel storm out of the room. This had been her last hope, and he had crushed it. This was no longer the man she had fallen in love with. This was not the man she had married. What do you think will happen in the next episode? Please follow, like, comment, and share. Your support is what encourages me to keep telling these stories. A month later, Bridget announced to the entire family that she was pregnant and proudly showed them the test results. Daniel hugged her tightly, overwhelmed with joy. He was finally going to be a father. He thanked Bridget for making him feel like a complete man. Mrs. Okoro danced around the house happily, singing songs of praise to God. She praised Bridget, calling her a real woman, and said she had removed the shame from their family. Mrs. Okoro then turned to mock Rachel, who had been silently watching everything. She told Rachel that what she could not achieve in 7 years, another woman had accomplished in just 1 month. Rachel congratulated Bridget calmly, telling her she was happy for her. Bridget ignored her completely. Unable to bear it anymore, Rachel took her car keys and drove off. She desperately needed fresh air. Mrs. Okoro shouted after her, "Let her go. Don't even come back." As Rachel drove aimlessly around the city, memories of her marriage with Daniel flooded her mind, how happy they once were and how deeply they had loved each other. She had been hoping for a miracle that would save her marriage, but now it felt impossible. Bridget was pregnant. To her, this felt like final proof that she had always been the problem, that she was incapable of having a child. That night, Mrs. Okoro prepared a large feast, and they all ate joyfully in Rachel's absence. Daniel joked that he prayed the baby would be 2 boys, and everyone laughed, saying it would surely be twins because God had finally answered their prayers. Rachel spent the night at her best friend Rose's house. She could not bring herself to sleep in her own home. Rose hugged her tightly and reassured her that everything would be fine. She encouraged Rachel to leave the marriage, warning that Daniel might officially marry Bridget now that she was pregnant. Rachel told Rose that her mother would be furious if she left her husband's house. Rose reminded her that it was her life and she had the right to make her own decisions. Rachel stayed with Rose for 3 days before returning home. No one asked where she had been. Mrs. Okoro even said she had prayed Rachel would not return. Rachel ignored her and went straight to her room. There, she discovered that Daniel had moved all his belongings out of their shared bedroom into the room Bridget was occupying. Her heart broke, but she told herself that perhaps it was for the best. Later, she went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast for herself and met Bridget there. She greeted her, but Bridget did not respond. As Rachel continued cooking, Bridget suddenly turned to face her. "Do you have no shame?" Bridget said mockingly. "You were married for 7 years without a child, yet you're still here cooking like nothing happened, even though I'm pregnant. Why don't you just leave?" Rachel ignored her and continued cooking. When Daniel returned from work that evening, he called Bridget outside. Bridget froze in shock when she saw a decorated luxury car parked in front of the house. Daniel handed her the keys and said, "Thank you for making me the happiest man in the world." Then he asked, "Will you marry me?" Bridget screamed in excitement and immediately said yes. Mrs. Okoro and Daniel's sisters jumped and screamed with joy. Rachel watched everything from her bedroom window. So this was really happening. With trembling hands, she called her lawyer and asked him to prepare divorce papers. She wanted to end her marriage to Daniel as soon as possible. A week later. A week after Daniel sent his mother away, Bridget started asking him for unexplainable, huge amounts of money. One day, she urgently needed 5 million naira. The next day, she needed 8 million naira for something important. She began draining his pockets with unreasonable demands. Daniel couldn't say no to her, so he always gave her whatever money she asked for. Bridget also stopped doing any housework and stopped cooking because she was heavily pregnant, so Daniel had to hire a maid. Anytime Daniel returned from work a little late, she would nag him all through the night, accusing him of spending time with other women. As the days went by, she became more and more frustrating. Daniel hated coming home late because it was always one problem or the other. Rachel, on the other hand, was enjoying her life and living comfortably. She even adopted a small puppy that kept her company. Life wasn't so bad after all. She and Rose spent their evenings together after work. She had also told her mother about her divorce, and her mother reacted exactly the way Rachel had predicted she would. One day, when Daniel came back from work, Bridget told him she wanted to buy a house that would cost 50 million naira. Daniel was surprised. He asked her why she needed a new house when their current one was perfectly fine for their family. Bridget insisted that she wanted a house in her own name. She said she wanted to own a property before her second child was born. Daniel told her there was some money he was expecting, and when it came in, he would buy the house for her. She became happy immediately and told him she loved him very much. But Daniel was beginning to doubt her words. Advice from a friend. He confided in his close friend and told him about the situation in his home. His friend, Marcus, told him that this was how pregnant women behaved, that it was all part of pregnancy, and that everything would go back to normal after she gave birth. He also advised Daniel to buy the house for Bridget, since he had the money. Daniel thanked him for his advice and said he was the only friend he had. 3 weeks later, Daniel bought the 2-bedroom duplex Bridget had requested. The house was very beautiful. Many people questioned Daniel, asking why he would buy a house for his wife when they were already living together. Daniel ignored them completely and sometimes told them it was none of their business. One day, when Daniel wasn't at home, Mrs. Okoro paid them a surprise visit. To her shock, Bridget refused to let her into the house. Bridget called her an old witch and warned her never to step foot into her house again. Mrs. Okoro exclaimed in disbelief. Had it gotten to the point where she was no longer allowed into her son's house? At that moment, she remembered Rachel. Rachel was a very good woman and would never have done such a thing. Mrs. Okoro left the house in shame. Bridget had come to destroy her family. 2 months later, Bridget gave birth to a set of twins, a boy and a girl. Daniel was over the moon. He now had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. He was the happiest man in the world. He showered Bridget with many expensive gifts. Visitors who came to see the newborns also brought expensive presents for the children. But as most of them left, they whispered among themselves that none of the children looked like Daniel. Even wealth didn't resemble him at all. Rachel also heard the news about Bridget's set of twins, but she didn't go to visit them. She remembered what had happened the last time she attended Wealth's naming ceremony. She genuinely wished Daniel and Bridget all the best. A shocking truth will be revealed in the next episode. Please follow, like, comment and share.
The children are not yours. They belong to your best friend Marcus.
2 years later. Bridget's twins were now 2 years old, and her first son, Wealth, was 4. They were enrolled in one of the most expensive schools in Lagos. A private driver took them to school every morning and brought them back home in the evening. Daniel made sure to provide everything they needed. Nothing was too expensive for his children. He loved them deeply. Even though Bridget constantly made huge financial demands, Daniel never complained. He believed it was normal, she was a woman, and women needed money. He had opened a big boutique for her in the heart of Lagos, and her business was flourishing. He had also made massive investments in his children's names. Their combined net worth was over 500 million naira. Daniel wanted them to have the best life. Rachel, on the other hand, was also doing very well. She had finally agreed to start a relationship with a wealthy businessman named Michael, after much persistence from him. She had told him about her past. She told him she believed she couldn't have children. But Michael only smiled and said children were gifts from God. If God wanted them to have one, He would give them one. That alone healed something deep inside Rachel. She loved Michael. He treated her like gold. He cherished her. They traveled to beautiful places together. For the first time in a long while, Rachel was genuinely happy. One evening, Daniel traveled out of Lagos for an important business meeting. Bridget hugged him goodbye. The moment he left, she called Marcus. That same night, Marcus came over. They laughed. They drank. And they went into the bedroom. Daniel's meeting was cancelled unexpectedly. Instead of informing anyone, he decided to return home that night and surprise his family. When he entered the house, it was unusually quiet. Too quiet. He walked toward the bedroom. And then, he opened the door. Bridget and Marcus. In his bed. Daniel froze. His entire world collapsed in 1 second. Marcus, he whispered. Bridget screamed. Marcus jumped up. Daniel staggered backward like he had been stabbed. How long? He asked, his voice shaking. How long has this been going on? Bridget laughed. 5 years. Daniel felt dizzy. You're lying. She crossed her arms. He's the one who introduced us, Daniel. He set everything up. Daniel turned to Marcus. You did this to me. Marcus said nothing. Then Bridget said the words that shattered him forever. The children are not yours. Daniel felt like he had been punched. What? They belong to Marcus. Daniel screamed. No. You're lying. She smacked. You're impotent, Daniel. You can't get any woman pregnant. His knees buckled. His vision blurred. Daniel collapsed. Bridget and Marcus panicked. But they didn't help him. They didn't call for help. They packed important documents, jewelry, cash, and passports. And left him on the floor. The maid Bridget had sent away returned unexpectedly that night. She found Daniel lying on the floor. Unconscious. She screamed. And rushed him to the hospital. When Daniel woke up, doctors ran several tests. Later, a doctor sat beside him and told him he couldn't have impregnated a woman, that he should have come years ago and received treatment, because now there was no way to help him. Daniel broke down, he cried bitterly. Days later, Daniel dragged himself to Rachel's apartment. When she opened the door, he froze. Rachel was heavily pregnant. He was shocked. This confirmed what Bridget and the doctor had told him. He couldn't get a woman pregnant. You're pregnant. Yes, she said calmly. I was the problem all along, Daniel said in a low voice. Rachel looked at him quietly. I never cheated on you, Daniel. I was faithful. If I had cheated on you just like Bridget did, I could have gotten pregnant a long time ago. That was when it truly hit him. He had destroyed the only good thing he ever had. Bridget and Marcus were arrested months later for fraud. Daniel lost most of his wealth. His family. His pride. His peace. Rachel gave birth to a healthy baby. She married Michael. And finally, she lived happily. The end. Thanks for following this story. What do you think about the story? Was it worth watching? Drop your answer in the comment section. Please click the link on my bio and subscribe to my YouTube channel.